Whenever me and my friends would get together for some drinks, we had one friend that was always a real cheapskate, and he'd always buy the cheapest kinds of liquor that he could. Sometimes he'd buy cheap wine, but not just any cheap wine. The cheapest one you could get was a boxed wine that had Don Francisco's face on it. Don Francisco is kind of like the Hispanic Bob Barker. He's hosted a show called Sábado Gigante for more than 50 years, and I guess he invested some of that Sábado Gigante money into a vineyard at some point. So he'd bring the Don Francisco boxed wines to our get-togethers, and they always tasted like rotten prune juice, and they had a chemical sort of aftertaste. And the day after drinking Don Francisco, you'd always get violent diarrhea. So whenever our friends showed up to our parties and we'd see Don Francisco's smiling face on that wine box, we'd all start checking our schedules to see if we had anything important to do the next day, moving around prior appointments we had with other kids, and making sure we've given ourselves a comfortable 6-hour gap of free time before daring to have our first glass of Don Francisco. Some kids would even go so far as to call their moms up and ask if she bought extra toilet paper when she went to the supermarket that week just to make sure. Every kind of cheap booze our friend brought to our parties had its own set of consequences. Don Francisco had you camped out on your toilet for the entirety of the next day, but there was another drink called chaparro that always left a metallic aftertaste in your mouth, and it stuck around for days no matter how much you brushed your teeth afterwards. The worst one of them all, though, was called super trueno, which means super thunder in Spanish. Whenever you drank super trueno, you'd get the indistinguishable taste of paint thinner in your mouth, and it was a well-known fact that if you drank too much super trueno, it would make you go blind in one eye for the rest of the night. And oddly enough, it was always the left eye that went blind and never the right. One night we're having a small get-together and our cheapskate friend brings over the fearful super trueno. We all groan and we're like, alright, let's do this. And we start walking around our party area with one hand covering our left eye, rehearsing what it's gonna be like once we're 3 or 4 super truenos in. The only incident is one of my friends bumping into an ottoman and almost knocking over a vase. But after we move a few things around, we all agree that the room is now pretty much super trueno proof. We start drinking and one of my friends says he's gotta take a sight test and get new glasses the next day, so he's not gonna be drinking any super trueno. For the next few hours, we're all drinking, talking, and having an awesome time. And then one of our other friends drops by with some girls, and when he's introducing them to everyone, I turn around and I'm awestruck because I've just laid eyes on the prettiest girl I've ever seen. We're all pretty shit-faced by then, so I cover my super trueno eye just to make sure it isn't the alcohol playing tricks with my vision, and she still looks stunning. Just to be on the safe side, I turn to my friend and I ask him, is it just me, or is that not the prettiest girl you've ever seen? My friend looks at her and he says, dude, she's gorgeous, you should go talk with her. But he sounds kind of drunk and he's pointing at her with a beer in his hand, so I tell him, you haven't been drinking super trueno, have you? And he says, no dude, I'm just having a couple beers tonight. And I say, remember, you're my eyes for the night, I can't see shit right now. And he says, the girl's hot as fuck, I'm looking at her right now. So I take another shot to gather up my courage and I go strike up a drunken conversation with her. We're talking for a while and I'm amazed because not only is she the prettiest girl I've ever seen, but she's also real interesting and fun to talk with. She tells me, I love trying out exotic food from other cultures. And I tell her, oh me too, I totally love that too. Somehow we start talking about movies and she says, I love movies that make me think about the plot as I'm walking out of the theater. And I tell her, that's amazing, that's exactly how I am. It's clear we have great chemistry together and everything is going awesome, so I decide to make my move. I ask her, have you ever had sushi before? And she says, no, but I'd love to try it. So I tell her, how about I pick you up at your house tomorrow and we'll go have some sushi. I also have an awesome DVD collection so I can bring some movies over for us to watch at your place after we've eaten. And she's super excited about it and I'm feeling on top of the world. The girls leave the party after a while and then it's just me and some of my friends left. I'm showing them the girl's number that I saved on my cell phone and all of them are telling me how bummed out they were when they saw me talking with her because they wanted to go up and get her number too. I drink with them for a bit longer until I'm dropped off at my house and I pass out in my bed. I wake up hungover the next day and it's noon. I cover up my right eye and I can confirm that the super trueno has now left my system. I call the pretty girl up and ask her if the date's still on and she says, absolutely, I can't wait. I hang up and I do a little victory lap in my room and I'm feeling awesome. I start looking through my DVDs to see what I should take for us to watch. I end up mixing and matching a few of them until I settle on 5 or so DVDs that I think will give her that thinking about the movie after it's over feeling she was talking about last night. I take a shower and then I drive over to her house to go pick her up. I get to her place and I ring the doorbell. The door opens up and I say, who's ready for some sushi? But it isn't the pretty girl from last night that's greeting me at the door. It's a very unpretty girl that tells me, yay, let's go have some sushi. She notices the stack of DVDs I brought with me and she tells tells me to put them inside in the TV room. I put them next to the TV and I cover up my right eye again and start looking around the room just to make sure I'm not still fucked up from last night. She tells me, my friend just called me and she says she's ready to be picked up whenever, and I don't know what she's talking about, but then I get a flashback from last night where she told me, I have a friend and me and her are like sisters, I swear to God, and me in my drunken stupor saying, oh wow, is that right? She sounds like an awesome person. Let's pick her up for sushi tomorrow too. I'd love to meet her. I curse my past drunken self and I tell the non-pretty girl, cool, we'll go pick her up. Could I use the bathroom first? I go into the bathroom and I call my friend from last night. He answers and I tell him, you were my eyes last night. I trusted you. He immediately says, Andy, I fucked up. I did drink some Super Truenos last night, but I was too drunk at the time to remember that I drank Super Truenos when you asked me. He asks me how bad the situation is and I tell him that she isn't as pretty as I thought, but I did enjoy talking with her last night, so maybe we'll still hit it off. He tells me good luck and I hang up. Me and non-pretty girl get in my car and we're on our way to go pick up her friend when she starts looking through my CDs. She says, these band names are so funny, and she puts a Radiohead CD in the CD player. Track 1 of OK Computer starts playing and I relax in my seat. I tap my hand to the music on the steering wheel and I feel that today might end up being pretty good after all, until the non-pretty girl says, this music's for emo kids, and she starts laughing, and now she looks even uglier to me than she did a few minutes ago. We pick her friend up at her house and she's a higher pitched and louder version of non-pretty girl. She gets in the back seat of the car and then non-pretty girl says, I'm gonna go in the back with her, take us to the place. And I'm left all alone in the front, acting as their chauffeur and listening to them shit on music that has a special meaning to me, until we finally reach the sushi restaurant. We go in and the restaurant's packed. The waiter seats us at a table in the middle of the room and he asks us if we've ever eaten sushi before. The non-pretty girl says, oh yeah, I eat sushi all the time. And the waiter says, ah, that's good. I'll be back in a few minutes to take your order then. He leaves and I look at non-pretty girl in disbelief and she says, well, I didn't want to look dumb in front of all these people. Just get us what you think we'll like. I order some tuna, some salmon, octopus, and squid. We're waiting for our sushi to come and the two girls are talking real loud, gossiping to each other about one of their other friends. We start getting looks from other people at the restaurant until finally the sushi arrives. The non-pretty girl grabs a tuna nigiri and she says, ew, what's this? I tell her, it's tuna. There's different cuts of tuna you can get and they all have different flavors and textures. But as I'm talking, she gets grossed out and the sushi falls from her hand and onto the floor. And that's about $3 down the toilet. She and her friend start laughing and they're poking the sushi and saying, ew, that's so gross. And people from the other tables are staring at us and I'm getting a lot of mean looks. I get pissed off and I tell the non-pretty girl, I thought you said you liked eating exotic food from other cultures. And she tells me, yeah, food. This isn't food. This is gross raw fish. I reach my breaking point because throughout the day, this girl has shown me she's not just ugly on the outside, but she's even uglier on the inside. She's a closed-minded, uncultured, unteachable waste of time and effort, and I feel like an idiot for having gotten myself into this mess. So I tell her, you want food that isn't gross? Okay. I call the waiter over and I tell him, could you please give these two ugly bitches some chicken teriyaki and an order of french fries from the kids menu? The two girls gasp and they get offended, and out of the corner of my eye I can see some of the other people at the restaurant trying not to laugh. They tell me to take them home, so I order the check, and then I take all my anger out on all the pieces of succulent sushi they were too grossed out by to eat. I drop both of them off at the non-pretty girl's house, and as they're walking in, the non-pretty girl tells me, hey dumbass, you left all your shitty DVDs in here. And for a moment, the thought of going in and getting all my DVDs back crosses my mind, but then I realize that I don't want to spend even one more second in the presence of these nitwits. So I tell her, you can keep them. That's the price I have to pay for being dumb enough to go out on a date with you. She flips me off and I drive away to my house, where I stay in bed for the rest of the day, cursing my own stupidity. After my date with the non-pretty girl, she started spreading the word around that I was an asshole to her and her friend, and a lot of girls avoided me after that. I also found out that on a few occasions, girls would ask some of my guy friends about me because they were interested, and if those guys also happened to like that same girl, they'd tell her that they should steer clear from me because I treat girls like shit. It was a good experience overall though, because it showed me who my true friends were, and my date from hell served as a valuable lesson for my other drinking buddies for years to come. The last I heard of the non-pretty girl was that a friend of mine saw her at a restaurant a few years ago. He says she was being loud and embarrassing, and that she was there with a guy that looked extremely disappointed in himself. I can only assume that he was just another poor soul that took a ride on the Super Trueno train the night before, and he unfortunately ended up in the same position I was in so many years ago.